Thanks everyone for joining us. I'm Jordan Rutter, Director of Communications at American Bird Conservancy. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel afterward. We'll be putting links in the chat, but in case you missed them or can't copy them down fast enough, please know that everything can be found in a follow-up email we'll send to registrants and on our website. Please submit any questions you have during the presentations using the Q&A box. Automated captions are available for this webinar, and you can turn them on by clicking on the CC icon. Before we begin, I want to share some background about American Bird Conservancy, shortened to ABC, which was founded in 1994 with the mission of protecting wild birds and their habitats across the Americas. We continue that work today following a conservation strategy outlined by the pyramid featured on the current slide. Our work strives to help keep common birds common and prevent the rarest species from going extinct. And bird conservation works. Species and groups of birds have rebounded in the past decades, but there's so much more to do, and American Bird Conservancy needs your support to do it. ABC is able to advance its mission to conserve wild birds and their habitats thanks to the generosity of bird enthusiasts and conservationists like you. I want to extend a big thank you, a personal one, and one on behalf of all of my colleagues at ABC, including the amazing experts that you'll be hearing from today, to all of the ABC members and supporters in the audience right now. The bird conservation efforts that we'll be talking about today are possible thanks to your support. And today, as you learn about how ABC is conserving bird habitats and fighting back against threats to bird populations, please consider becoming a member or making an additional gift to support these critical efforts. Right now, every dollar raised will count toward our Habitat is Home 1-to-1 match to raise a combined $1 million for bird conservation across the Americas by January 1st. Visit abcbirds.org/help-habitat or scan the QR code on today's slides to make a gift. Thank you so much for caring about birds and the habitats that they need to survive and thrive. 2023 has been quite a year for birds, for ABC, for all of us. I'm excited to have a special format for this webinar where we'll get to actually chat with our speakers and just talk birds more than usual. There's not going to be any formal presentations, but rather a conversation about what has happened in 2023 and what to look forward to in the year ahead. The exciting part, especially about this format today, is that the conversations will be entirely fueled by questions from our members. Thank you so much to everyone who submitted questions during registration, and I hope you pay close attention as I read them out. I'll be mentioning folks by name specifically and giving our members shout outs. I'm lucky enough to have 4 of my brilliant colleagues joining us today, and we'll be spotlighting each of them individually for this, yes, you guessed it, round robin. These ABC staff members represent a specific level of the ABC conservation pyramid, as shown on the slide, from focusing on the most endangered birds to addressing threats facing all birds to what it means to build capacity in the bird conservation movement. I'm so excited for you to meet them and offer them some much-deserved spotlight and recognition and learn from them. Given our conversational format, I'll be introducing each person as we go, then we'll come together at the end for a Q&A. To kick things off, we're starting at the top of the pyramid, those most endangered birds, and chatting with John Mittermeier. John is ABC's director for the Search for Lost Birds initiative. John has had a lifelong interest in the conservation of rare and poorly known species of birds, and he has conducted ornithological fieldwork in tropical countries around the world, including Suriname, the Solomon Islands, Madagascar, Samoa, and Indonesia, among other places. Prior to joining ABC, he received a PhD in biodiversity conservation from the University of Oxford. An avid birder, he has seen more than 5,000 species of birds while birding in 120 countries. John, I'd love to welcome you to the conversation if you want to get on camera.
Thanks, Jordan. It's great to be here. I'm really excited to have the chance to talk with everyone and reflect a little bit on this past year.
Yeah, me too. I know you've had a really big year, so it's wonderful to get this opportunity to connect. What was your highlight? Tell me about your year.
Well, there were a lot of highlights. As you said, it's been a big year, but I think one that really stands out has to do with this bird that you can see right here on the screen, the dusky tetraka. And to talk about that one, I can take you all the way back to January 1st. So literally on New Year's Day, 2023, I was camped in the forest in Madagascar with some of our Malagasy partners there, led by Lily Arison, Renata Roland. He's an incredible Malagasy ornithologist who we've been working with on this project. And we were trying to find the dusky tetraka, this bird that nobody had definitely recorded in 24 years. So it hadn't been seen since 1999. And we'd been in the forest for 10 days. We weren't sure if we were gonna be able to find it. And on New Year's Day, we found it. And it was just an incredible way to start off 2023.
What an adventure. Goodness gracious. That's amazing. I know we'll talk about that a little bit more, but in case folks lost the thread here, tell me a little bit more about what the Lost Birds program is. What's the definition of a lost bird? I want to give a shout out to one of our members, Hope, who is asking for some clarity on what species count as lost birds, specifically the ivory-billed. So John, can you just give a little bit more background?
Yeah, absolutely. So how we define a lost bird is we use a definition that says anything that has no independently verifiable documentation in the last 10 or more years. So it sounds like a bit of a mouthful there, but basically it's any bird that doesn't have sound recordings, photographs, or genetic material in the last 10 years and is not considered extinct according to the IUCN. So we rely on the IUCN data. So that gives us these category of birds that we can kind of think of as like the ultimate mysteries in ornithology, right? We think they're still out there. We hope that they're still out there, but nobody's definitely been able to find them for at least a decade. So that's how we're defining lost birds.
Okay. So literally the tip of the ABC pyramid, because they're the rarest of the rare, the most endangered. Can you put it into context a little bit about how lost birds help conservation and the ABC mission?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, it's the tip of the pyramid there. And the sad part about lost birds is some of these species could be extinct, right? You know, so we're right on this edge. We're trying to, hopefully these species are not extinct. We're trying to do what we can to save them. But for birds that haven't been seen for a long time, you never know. And so you're always sort of working with that potential. And obviously we want to be able to find these birds. We want to learn more about them, and we want to ensure that they don't go extinct. So this is really right there in that top of the pyramid, preventing extinctions. How do you prevent something going extinct? One is you find it, you make sure you know what it is, and you try and get a sense of what the threats are and what steps are needed to protect it.
Awesome. And we've had some pretty amazing finds lately, right? So the Santa Marta saberwing, which was rediscovered in 2022. There's also the bird in your Zoom background right now as well. So can you share a little bit more about what's new with, say, let's say the Santa Marta saberwing? What's new with that conservation effort and what's happening on the ground after it's been rediscovered? Can you tell us a little bit more about this species and, you know, you find it and then what?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can tell you a bit about the saberwing, but also mentioning for those who don't know, this bird over my shoulder here is the black-naped pheasant pigeon. This is a bird that hadn't definitely been recorded since 1896, and we found it in 2022. So it doesn't quite make our 2023 highlights, but it was a species that we helped to rediscover last year. And the fact that we were able to have some successes for these is so important because these birds are, you know, there are a lot of birders out there. There are a lot of people looking. And so to have a bird that hasn't been seen in 10 years, actually finding these things is incredibly hard. And there've been moments where I've been working on this initiative and thinking, oh my gosh, maybe we're not going to find any of these birds. So to have some successes is really great. As you mentioned for the saberwing, this bird was rediscovered by some of our partners in Colombia, Selva, and Jürgen Vega was the one who actually found it. He was working with Selva, it's a Colombian NGO. They found it in 2022. And the amazing thing about this bird is it was lost in 1946. It went, we can do the math here, what was it, 64 years, I think, until 2010, when a single individual was caught in a mist net. We thought, oh my gosh, Santa Marta saberwing has been rediscovered, and then it disappeared again. So that's kind of our worst case scenario as a bird conservation group. It's like something's lost, it's found, and nothing happens. And so when this bird was rediscovered again in 2022, we wanted to make sure that we could act super quickly to ensure that we didn't have a repeat of 2010. And thanks to some amazing support from people at ABC who had supported the program for us, so we had some money in hand, we were able to give a grant to Selva within a couple of weeks of them rediscovering this saberwing. And they got out into the field. They've been monitoring it for the past year. I can give you some hints, some of the excitement here. They found the bird multiple times. They have a lot of great information and a lot of sort of conservation steps that are coming, and they're getting ready to announce that news soon. So stay tuned. I think there'll be a big update about the saberwing either coming at the very end of this year or perhaps early next year. But I'm really excited about how that project has gone, and just the fact that we were able to change the narrative from the last time the bird was found.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it sounds like the umbrella effect of all of this work and conservation efforts is really important too, right? Just in terms of helping other birds that share that same habitat, but also getting people involved. So I want to give a shout out to ABC member Janie, who asked about what role does citizen science have in protecting birds and specifically the Lost Birds program? Can you tell us a little bit more about the people aspect?
Yeah, so as you said, these birds are great umbrellas. There can be captivating stories. They can be ways for people to get engaged, to get interested in places like Madagascar or the Santa Martas in Colombia. And citizen science is the key to our whole initiative in a lot of ways. So we use citizen science data to figure out which birds were actually lost. So a colleague of mine here at AAC, Cameron Rutt, he led a big project over the course this past year to sift through millions of citizen science records from places like eBird and use that data to determine the 128 birds, these are on our list now, 128 birds around the world that met our lost criteria. And so for any of you listening, if you've participated in citizen science at all, if you've submitted a checklist to eBird, if you put photographs, because we need media, but if you've submitted photographs to eBird or iNaturalist, you've helped the search for lost birds in a small way. So thank you to all the citizen scientists for contributing that data that has helped us figure out which birds are lost.
That's awesome. And so obviously, again, you had this incredible first day of the year. You peaked, right? Your year was made. But what else happened? Do you have any other big highlights that you want to share for this year in review?
Yeah, so that it was a peak, but there were a lot of peaks afterwards too. So we continue to support more work on the dusky tetraka. I'm really excited to say that our colleague who I mentioned, Lily Arison, he was named the National Geographic Conservation Leader of the Year. So he received a big award acknowledging his work. So we've done more work with that. I mentioned the saberwing. And then one of the huge things we accomplished this year was building a website. So there's a website that we have now, searchforlostbirds.org. And it looks like it's about to pop up on the screen. There it is. So that's the map of lost birds. If anybody wants to visit it, you can go look at it right now. And hopefully it's easy and fun to navigate. But the fun thing about this is it includes all that data that I mentioned, all that citizen science data that's filtered into determining this list of which birds qualify as lost. We've now put those list of species out there. So if you want to explore where the lost birds are, you can see the map of their distribution here. You want to poke around and see which species meet the criteria, whether there are any lost birds in your area, you can do that. So that was, I guess the website looks pretty straightforward, but it was a huge amount of effort, and we're really excited about how it's going to support our project and other conservation work going forward.
Yeah, that's definitely a huge accomplishment for sure. And it was interesting that there's a lot of patterns all of a sudden showing up on that map. So interesting for folks to go check it out. And I'm sure that also ties into, again, that citizen science and detection data submission and crowdsourcing of knowledge and everything. So anyway, that is all me rambling because it's so exciting, and unfortunately we are running out of time already. So John, we'll talk to you at the end in the Q&A, but any other thoughts, any other tidbits for what's ahead in 2024 that you want to share?
Well, I think I don't want to use up all our time here. I could tell you about a whole slate of exciting things we have, but just to tease it a little bit, we have at least 5 projects that are already getting started and will be happening in 2024, looking for lost birds in places like India, Cameroon, and a few other places around the world. So stay tuned for that. There's going to be more searches happening. And of course, that information I mentioned about the Santa Marta saberwing should be coming out soon.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, John. Don't worry, I'm not going to lose you now. But folks, we're going to transition to our next speaker and talk to John at the end of the Q&A. Thanks again, John, for all of this.
Thanks so much, Jordan.
Yeah. Next up, we have Adam Knox, who is managing the aerial deployment of mosquitoes for population control as part of the Birds Not Mosquitoes initiative here at ABC. Adam has been active in conservation projects related to invasive species early detection and control since 2008. He was formerly the operations manager of the Maui Invasive Species Committee, a project of the University of Hawaii, and also previously worked as the brown tree snake rapid response team coordinator with the U.S. Geological Survey on Guam. Adam has worked on multiple aerial deployment projects related to invasive species control in Hawaii, and his technical expertise related to aircraft use led him to join ABC as part of the Birds Not Mosquitoes team. He earned a Master's of Environmental Science and Management from the University of California, Santa Barbara. Welcome, Adam.
Thanks for having me. It's good to see everyone, and
Absolutely.
glad to be here.
Yeah, well, I have to say, I feel like your year is joining the ABC flock. So I want to again just welcome you and thank you for being here. And I'm really excited for you to share a little bit more about this incredible, literally vital role that you are leading here. So can you tell us a little bit more about what you are doing for birds in Hawaii?
Sure. So as many are probably aware, Hawaii is one of the extinction and threatened and endangered species capitals of the world, actually, certainly in the US. And here in particular, we've got endemic forest birds that are kind of like on the brink. So John mentioned ones that are lost, already. We're working on ones that are still here, but they're struggling. So part of the reason the pressure on these birds has to do with avian malaria. So mosquitoes are not native to Hawaii. They were introduced, for the last few hundred years. And none of the birds here, forest birds, evolved any sort of defense mechanisms for those mosquitoes and the diseases that they carry. The pressure from avian malaria, so there's a lot of people are familiar with malaria. There's an avian bird version of that. They're immense here on the native forest birds. And so part of the challenge is to try to figure out how to reduce that pressure by removing the mosquitoes. And so over the last, well, it's been many years, this project has been in development, but since I've come on, part of the challenge is to try to get these mosquitoes that we're using a form of like a sterilized insect program, but it's called the incompatible insect technique. We're using that to try to reduce pressure on these native forest birds, and we're actually introducing mosquitoes to the wildland landscape as kind of like a Trojan horse to reduce pressure on these native endemic forest birds. So because of the extreme remoteness and the terrain here in Hawaii, and I'm based on Maui, that's where we've started this project. It requires that we use aircraft. In this case, right now we're using helicopters to actually access these areas. They're very distant. They're very difficult to reach. The weather conditions can be pretty challenging. And so we use a helicopter to get there and do the work. Like as I mentioned before, we're dropping these mosquitoes, these incompatible mosquitoes into the landscape with the hope that they find the wild mosquitoes, and there's sort of like a dead end in the reproduction with a subsequent population crash. And so we have to go there week over week, usually twice a week into these environments and this bird habitat, and drop these mosquito capsules into the forest to try to get the effect we're looking for, and hopefully have the birds recover and reduce that pressure on them with the avian malaria.
That's very intense for sure. What talk about the lengths that you and ABC are going to help conserve birds and their habitats right now. That is amazing. I want to give a shout out to one of our members, Susan, who asked for a little bit of clarification about what Wabakya is and what any consequences, or what are you monitoring exactly once you release these mosquitoes. Again, it's not something that we hear about every day. So if you could just explain a little bit more, that'd be appreciated.
Sure. Yeah. So the incompatible insect technique it's interesting and unique in that it doesn't use any form of genetic modification or anything like that. We're actually sort of taking advantage of and weaponizing a natural biological process. And you mentioned Wolbachia. That's a bacterium that's common to many insects, if not most insects in the animal kingdom. It lives inside their bodies. And what happens is if bacteria between two insects, this Wolbachia bacteria has slightly different strains, they don't have successful reproduction, hence the term incompatible insect technique. And so we take advantage of that by introducing mosquitoes that have a slightly different strain of this Wolbachia bacteria. And the nice thing is this bacterium is found already here in Hawaii. It's very common. We're just sort of figured out a way to make them incompatible and reduce that the reproduction. So that's kind of how it works. And what we strive for is to make sure there's not the bacterium that we are utilizing does not become endemic on the landscape. And so there's a significant monitoring network and program that we have in place, trapping and all sorts of monitoring to make sure that's not the case, because it just becomes ineffective at that point. If the bacterium, if they're compatible and they match up, they can have progeny. And so we don't want that to happen. And but yeah, we take great lengths to ensure that with mosquitoes remain incompatible. We only release male mosquitoes. Females are the ones that bite, by the way, in the Culex species genus. And so we're only releasing the males onto the landscape.
And are you just taking them in like a big box and then opening the box and letting them go? Or like, can you talk us through, like, you go from the facility to the helicopter?
Right.
What
Yeah,
does
it's
that
actually a
mean?
pretty complicated process. There's a lot of steps in place, a lot of parts to the whole thing. And so the mosquitoes are reared. They have to be reared first, and they need to be transported. And so once they get to us, we have to unbox them, get them all sorted and set up. They come in a biodegradable paper capsule, essentially. And we have a system in the helicopter that we load and fill up, essentially. And once we have our team together and everything's ready to go, there's a person that sits in the front to record the data for where we do the drops, and also to call the points, the GPS points, and where the person sitting in the back who does the pod dropping, where they need to drop those. And so, and then of course you have the pilot, and they've got like a little heads up display, and they fly along a predetermined line, and we just carefully coordinate between those three, the team, in getting the pods out, or the capsules out into the landscape. So it's quite a process when it's all said and done. That's a very easy way to describe it, I guess.
Oh, I'm sure. It sounds incredible. So what's a top highlight for you for 2023? Do you have anything especially that you're proud of or really going to hold on to?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of came to ABC a little late in the game on this project. It's been in development and planning for many years. And so I think the realization of this sort of concept and idea to putting it into practice, because we just started in November with the first releases, it's I think a huge accomplishment, given the gravity of the whole thing. And so we're really excited that it's actually moved into this real phase where it's actually happening. So it's a big accomplishment. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I know that both this project and everything is long time coming, but I want to highlight a ABC supporter, Pat from Texas, who asked, have any birds gone extinct, and asking what birds could go extinct. So again, we're at the top of the ABC pyramid right now. And Adam, do you want to speak to those birds?
sure. Yeah. So I believe it's, since humans arrived to the islands, it's like 95 of 100 and over 140 bird species found nowhere else in the world, only here in Hawaii, have gone extinct. I think there's probably, I know the data is on the ABC website, but I think it's 33 of Hawaii's remaining 44 endemic birds are on the listed as endangered species. And some of these birds haven't even been seen since decades. So it's very likely they could be, unfortunately, extinct. That's where John comes in. But the ones that we're most focused on at the moment, just because they're kind of critical, in terms of numbers, are the Maui parrotbill and that's on Maui. And we think there's probably less than 200 of them. They're beautiful birds, very interesting and unique. And also the akiki, which is on Kauai, and the last survey turned up less than 10. And so those are the ones that we're really pushing. We're trying to do this project throughout the Hawaiian Islands. Maui is the first sort of start, and we'll probably progress to Kauai next. But it's tricky. It's tough work, and so we're hoping that this gives them a shot, gives them a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. A definite race against time, it seems like. We are going to talk to you again at the Q&A at the end, but before I let you go for now, do you have any other big things you're looking forward to in 2024? Any other things that we can kind of recap before I let you go?
As far as looking ahead, we're trying to move into the uncrewed aerial systems, so known as drones, as well, to augment this aerial deployment aspect of these, releasing these incompatible insect mosquitoes through the IAT technique. And so that we're excited about moving that forward into the future, and hopefully that'll represent a good augment to this program. Yeah,
no, I feel like, Adam, you're giving a lot of folks here hope for all of the bird conservation efforts that are taking place. So thank you. Thank you for taking the time. And again, we'll talk to you at the Q&A at the end. Thank you.
Thanks.
Our next speaker is Juan. Juan Oteyza is ABC's International Conservation Project Officer. Juan works to protect birds in Latin America and the Caribbean, focusing on migratory birds and their wintering grounds, as well as threatened species in the region. Before joining ABC, Juan was a research scientist with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. He led efforts to conserve the critically endangered Florida grasshopper sparrow. Previously, Juan worked in a variety of bird research projects in Venezuela, Borneo, South Africa, and the US. He was born and raised in Venezuela, and Juan has a bachelor's degree in environmental science and a PhD in wildlife biology. Hola, Juan.
Hola.
I feel like you too had a huge year this year because you joined the ABC flock. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm so excited to talk about your year. What stood out?
Thank you. Yeah, clearly, as you mentioned, a big component of a big part of my year was joining ABC. I'm very excited about that. And I would say, in terms of one thing that stood out is the work that we're doing in the Dominican Republic. And a big reason for that, I'm not going to lie, is because I had the opportunity to visit the island and see the work that we're doing there, get to meet our partners in person. And there's no substitute for seeing things firsthand, seeing the work that we have been doing, to meet our partners, talk to them about the challenges that they're seeing, how can we move forward with our conservation efforts, and so forth. So yeah, the work that we're doing in the Dominican Republic takes place in 2 birdscapes. And if you're new to birdscapes are ABC's strategy for protecting habitat for migratory birds, sort of at the landscape level. And these are regions that have been identified as important for migratory species. And they're large enough that they can include many target species, but also small enough that they can be managed effectively. In the Dominican Republic, there's 2 main birdscapes where we're working: the septentrional birdscape to the north, and then the Sierra Bauruco birdscape in the south. And one thing that is important to highlight about these birdscapes is that they have different use landscapes within them. And these 2 birdscapes are a great example of that. So the septentrional birdscape to the north, it's kind of in the cacao growing region. And we have supported our local partner from the Escuela to do kind of more traditional conservation work in protected areas, as well as promoting best management practices for cacao growers. So, and likewise in the south, we're working with SOH Conservation, another local conservation organization. And the southern part of the island is more of the coffee growing region. So there we're working with SOH in both protected areas and with coffee farmers as well. So, and I would say another highlight from the work that we're doing in the Dominican Republic is that in the north, in the septentrional birdscape, we actually helped launch the first bird-friendly cacao certification. This is a certification by the Smithsonian Institution, and you may have heard about bird-friendly coffee, but this is actually the first ever cacao, bird-friendly cacao. And ABC helped pilot the project for this program, and so far almost 200 tons of cacao have been certified bird-friendly.
That sounds like a pretty sweet deal. But Juan, I'm a bird person. Tell me more about the birds that you saw on your trip. Like, that was an incredible photo of that black-throated blue. What else did you see?
Yeah, so I would say the highlight would have to be Bicknell's thrush. So I was lucky enough to see two of Bicknell's thrush, and one of the reasons why it's a highlight is because that's one of the main drivers of our conservation work in the Dominican Republic. Bicknell's thrush, it's a migratory species. They breed in northeastern North America, but most of their population winters in the island of Hispaniola, where the Dominican Republic and Haiti are. So that's kind of a main driver of our conservation work. But of course, the work we're doing is benefiting other migratory and resident species. And I was also able to see a lot of other migratory species, such as that black-throated blue warbler that you saw in the picture with the coffee beans.
Yeah. It's always amazing when you get to be on the wintering grounds with those birds, because I feel like you get to see the full annual life cycle in action, right? Because they're birds that so many of our ABC members and supporters see during the breeding season, but to actually understand that that journey, that phenomenon is amazing. So I know that you're a project officer in Latin America and the Caribbean. So what other places are you currently doing work and partner collaborations with?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in my focus area is Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean. So aside from the Dominican Republic, we're doing work in Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica. But I would have to say that the migratory bird program as a whole also works in other countries such as Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador, and Peru.
Which makes total sense because birds don't observe political boundaries, right? We have to conserve the entire Western Hemisphere because birds travel throughout the landscape throughout the Americas. So that's really important and makes total sense. Well, what other projects are you excited about right now? And you know, given those species, what else are we doing?
Yeah, so for the migratory bird program, one of the big things that happened here was the launch of the Birds Plus program. So the Birds Plus program has three main components. First one is to incentivize best management practices for farmers and ranchers. So as I pointed out, we do work with partners in working landscapes. So that is we want to make sure that those practices that are taking place in those working landscapes are beneficial both for the farmers and for the birds as well. So we're incentivizing those practices. We're also connecting those working lands with finance and markets to scale up that habitat conservation. And a good example of that is we're working with a partner in Costa Rica to help plant to restore habitat for birds with rubber trees that are being planted along with native trees. And the tire company has expressed interest in supporting the work that we're doing. So that's a good example of this, what the program is accomplishing so far. We're also, as part of this program, developing the Birds Plus Index. And this is just a tool for investors and NGOs to use to measure biodiversity and the benefits of these best management practices using birds as indicators.
Which makes sense. I mean, we need the science and the research to back all of our conservation decisions and efforts. So that makes total sense to me. And it's I mean, who would have thought birds and rubber right? Like just that combo is really cool and exciting. I'm sure there's a lot more that you could share there, but for now, I got to ask, what are you looking forward to in 2024 then, right? Like you've had this incredible year. What's next?
Well, as a relative newcomer to ABC, I'm definitely just excited to get to know, work together with these partners, but also to grow the program, hoping to extend the work that we're doing in the countries to new birdscapes within those countries, but also to start working in other countries that we currently don't have a strong presence. So those are the two main things. And of course, continuing to grow the Birds Plus program, because that's a big part of what we're focusing on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Juan. Again, we'll talk to you more during the Q&A portion, but I appreciate you taking the time, and we will transition now. Thank you again, Juan.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we are moving down the ABC pyramid to threats to all birds and building capacity. And so Kaitlyn Parkins is going to join me to represent the ABC Glass Collisions program. She's the coordinator for that program and has been working in wildlife conservation since 2008. She holds a research position studying native plants, pollinators, migratory birds, and bats. After moving to New York City in 2012, she began birding as a way to connect with nature in the city and was introduced to the world of urban bird conservation through an internship conducting window collision monitoring. Prior to joining ABC, Kaitlyn focused on mitigating threats to urban birds through research, policy, and outreach, and worked to help pass bird-friendly building and lights out legislation and advised on bird-friendly retrofits. Kaitlyn holds a master's in biology and an advanced certificate in conservation biology from Fordham University. Welcome, Kaitlyn. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, Jordan. Excited to chat with you and all the other super engaged participants on this webinar.
Yeah. Well, do you want to kick things off with what your top highlight for the year is?
We had a ton of highlights in 2023, but one of the first things we accomplished and one of the first things I worked on as an ABC staff member was bringing bird tape back to the market. So bird tape is a really simple collision prevention product. It's just a tape that goes on your windows. You can put it on there in a really simple pattern, or you can get super creative with it, which I tried to do myself. My artistic skills were a little lacking, but hey, as long as you follow the rules for collision prevention, which is no spaces between your product more than 2 inches by 2 inches apart, you can prevent collisions at your windows for the biggest birds all the way down through hummingbirds, kinglets. And so I'm just really excited that we were able to get another product on the market for collision prevention.
Yeah, me too. And I know one of our ABC supporters, Elizabeth, is also very happy to hear that because Elizabeth asked what options are there for homeowners and what can people do at home to treat their windows and make sure that it's easy to do yourself, DIY, and isn't quite as obtrusive of that view that we all like.
Yeah, everyone wants to still be able to see out, and I assure you that there are options out there that will absolutely preserve your view. And this is a great question because 1 billion birds die of collisions in North America every single year, and half of those happen at homes. So we often think about this as a tall building problem. It's not. And so one of our other accomplishments from the collisions team this year was revamping our home collision prevention page. And I think that's going to get dropped into the chat. So what we have there are a list of specific products you can use, but also resources on how to look at your windows, evaluate what might work best for you, tips and tricks for making sure you're installing it, guidelines. So our hope is that with these resources, everyone is going to be able to find the right product that works for them, it's in their budget, and that they find aesthetically pleasing because it is important, and collisions prevention can look really nice, actually.
Yeah, artistic.
We try.
So Kaitlyn, you mentioned 1 billion birds in the US alone die from collisions. That's the estimate. I think folks probably would know it's high, but at least recently have focused on a different number recently. I'm sure a lot of ABC members and supporters are very familiar with 1,000 birds that unfortunately were lost during that tragic event in Chicago this past fall after colliding with a building. Do you have any update or other commentary that you'd like to share on that event? Because I think that was a real rallying call for people's care and concern for birds and the issue of collisions.
Yeah, that was such a tragic event. It was like my anti-highlight, I would say, of the year. So for anyone who's not familiar, there was a spectacular migration event in the Great Lakes region during fall migration. And from a birding perspective, this is a phenomenon that we love to see and experience, and people travel to see these sorts of fallouts. But from the birds' perspective, as they are then trying to navigate our built environment, it can be deadly. So at a single building on the lakefront in Chicago, 1,000 birds died right at just a single building. To that building specifically, American Bird Conservancy and other partners in the region, like the Chicago Bird Alliance, have been in conversation with the managers, explaining to them why this happened, and also recommending both long and short-term fixes that they can put in place. I feel very hopeful. They seem to be taking the issue very seriously, but we, of course, will continue to follow up, and we will certainly be nagging them if we need to. And so, yeah, we're on it, and we're hoping to see something in place before the spring, both reducing their lighting and fixing their glass. I was just going to say, I think it's really important to remember that this one building was really bad, particularly bad, and it got a lot of media attention, which I think is a little bit of a silver lining. But birds were colliding all over the region over those couple of nights and days. And when it comes to 1 billion birds a year, it's really the couple of collisions every single day at buildings across North America that build up over time. And so I think it's important that we address this issue everywhere. And that is what drives our work, from homes to tall buildings, from urban centers to suburbs to mountain cabins. We really, at ABC, we attempt to address this issue as many places as possible and from as many different angles as possible.
No, I appreciate you saying that. And I appreciate one of ABC members, Diane, raising that too. Diane is very concerned about the buildings in her area in New Jersey, but collisions is a literal global threat to birds. And so, Kaitlyn, what can people do in their cities and their communities to address similar situations as we were just talking about, right? So we kind of have two ends of the spectrum now. We have treating your own windows at home. Then we have city buildings that we were just talking about. Can you connect those dots in those places? What kind of resources do you have?
Absolutely. So I think we can divide this into sort of two things. One is addressing existing buildings. And then, of course, there's the policy solution, which we can get into a little bit more later. But if there's a problem building in your area that is killing birds, it can be a long and onerous process to get a retrofit in place, but it can be really worthwhile. So we have a website with quite a few documents and recommendations for how to approach building managers and decision makers, what kind of conversations you can have with them. And like I said, it can be a slog, but we've seen some really great retrofits go into place this year. There was a particular really bad building in New York City that just got a lot of press because they are about to put a retrofit in place. We at ABC have been working with New York City Audubon on that building. I actually started that project back when I worked there in 2020. So it has been years, but it's really exciting to get these retrofits on high profile buildings in place because you set a precedent, you get a lot of media attention, you can show how elegant retrofits can really be. And so it's definitely worthwhile. So check out our resources on it. And then we at ABC are also available to support the collisions team, can meet with you, attend meetings with building managers, provide technical assistance on possible solutions, whatever support looks like to you, we're definitely here for it.
That's amazing. And I want to make sure to come back to, you mentioned policy, and I want to come back to it because I want to represent ABC supporter Daniel from Wisconsin, who's asking about what are our policymakers doing for this issue, especially given how wide scale and focusing on the US, it's across the country, but again, it's global. So talk to me about collisions legislation, Kaitlyn. Tell me about bird-friendly construction and incentives for both our our government officials, but then also the people that enact it.
Yeah, it's absolutely ABC. Like, we want to see a policy solution to that because we can address buildings on an individual basis, but more and more and more of these buildings are being built, and there just isn't enough capacity in the world to address each one individually. And so we've got to get policies in place that require the use of bird-friendly materials to sort of put a stop to the issue so that we can go back and focus on those retrofits. So there are municipalities that do have bird-friendly building requirements. New York City was one of the big ones that happened recently that got enacted in 2021. And ever since then, we've seen a lot of momentum for additional municipalities across the US and in Canada. Let's see, in 2023, we had some good wins. DC's legislation passed in 2022, but it was finally signed by the mayor in early 23. Berkeley, California passed an ordinance, as did the states of Maryland and Maine. And in Wisconsin, Madison had legislation that was upheld during a legal challenge. And so we've had some really big legislative wins. We've seen a lot of progress on this at the city level, but no municipality is too small. So if you're looking to get an ordinance passed, and that can be in your community, but it can also be on a campus or through a department of buildings, lots of different options. So we do have a model ordinance on our website that you can download and use as a template, as well as a bunch of other documents and tips on starting those conversations. And I sound like a broken record, but we on the collisions team are always here to support. We've been in tons of meetings. We're always willing to provide testimony to support these laws. So, the policy solution is really the solution for collisions. And we are happy to help anyone who's willing to start that process in their community.
That's very generous of you, Kaitlyn. But I want to clarify, we're looking at legislation and policy to create and uphold standards, right? Like the reason why this is happening is so that architects, construction companies, they can all make sure to have bird-friendly, bird-smart practices from the beginning. It's not meant to be overly legislative. That's not quite the right word, but it's really trying again to highlight that the ABC collisions team, ABC at large, is just really trying to make advancements for bird conservation and address this threat to birds.
Absolutely. It's super easy to incorporate bird-friendly design from the beginning. And that includes building, not just like using bird-friendly glass, but building the building in a way that you're not attracting and trapping birds in dangerous places. And the best way to do that is from the start. So we also do a lot of architect education, and we provide those resources and guidelines for professionals too.
Well, any last comments, Kaitlyn, before I talk to you again at the Q&A? This has flown by, so I appreciate I appreciate the time.
I just want to highlight, because it is the one picture I have, we were able to test 65 different bird-friendly products in our testing tunnel this year, and I was finally able to actually take a visit to the testing tunnel, which is at Foreman's Branch Bird Observatory in Maryland. And I don't have time, I don't think, to explain exactly how this test works, but rest assured, no birds are harmed in our testing protocol. But testing these products gets more options on the market, and more options regulations mean these things are likely, more likely to get used, and policies are easier to put in place. And we can get really technical with it, which color and line width works on which glass with which low E. And it gets super technical, but I'm a really big nerd and I love that stuff. So this was a very exciting visit for me.
It's yes, we definitely want to hear more about that, Kaitlyn. So don't mean to cut you off, but thank you so much again. We'll talk to you in the Q&A. And I am very excited to say that we have one more special ABC guest before that Q&A portion. Erin Chen, our Vice President of Development. Hi, Erin.
Hi, Jordan. Hey, everybody.
How has your year been?
It's been fabulous. I see so many wonderful ABC supporters on this list, so many familiar faces. Hi, everybody. I'm Erin Chen, Vice President of Development at ABC, and I just wanted to pop in to say thank you all for being here, and a huge thank you to all of our members and everyone who supported ABC in 2023. It has been an incredible year, as you have all heard, and we absolutely could not do what we do for bird conservation without you. So all of us at ABC are just so grateful. And as Jordan mentioned earlier, if you would like to support the Habitat is Home one-to-one match, or if you are not a member and would like to renew or join, you can visit those links in the chat. We can probably pop them back in there. But I just really wanted to say thank you to everybody for your support, because all of these wonderful accomplishments that you're hearing about today, we just couldn't do it without you all, and you make it possible. So thank you. And now I think we need to get back to the birds. I saw a lot of questions in the chat, so hopefully we have a little bit of time to hear more from all of our experts.
Thanks so much, Erin. Yeah, if all of our experts can join me back on camera, we're gonna start the Q&A portion. We are going to inundate our ABC members and supporters with future comms and resources, because unfortunately we won't have time to get through everything, but I can't thank everyone enough for their engagement and questions. I think one of the best places to start as we transition, though, is folks really want to take action. They really want to help birds, and I cannot thank them enough for that willingness. Kaitlyn, you shared about what folks can do at home in terms of collisions. Anyone else want to chime in with some actions folks could take tonight with their families? Juan, I'm looking at you because you mentioned some pretty tasty things that might be on the menu.
Yeah, of course, as a consumer, if you want to support bird conservation, a good way to do it is to try to buy products that are friendly certified. Coffee, and it also now cacao, chocolate.
Yeah. I want to give a shout out to ABC members and supporters Joan and John, who specifically are asking about this bird-friendly lifestyle. How can they put birds first every day of their lives? And so John, as a lifelong bird person, do you have any other comments to add to that?
Yeah, I think just, well, contributing to citizen science, as I mentioned, participating. I think that's one of the most amazing trends that's happening now in birds and bird conservation, is the way of this opportunity for all of us to collaborate and work together on this. So participate in citizen science, and then help support ABC and help support our programs is a great way to help put birds first. So I'll give the shameless plug there.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I appreciate that, especially because, Adam, I just want to make sure you feel free to chime in, but, you know, we're all in this together and we're all doing it for birds. So definitely appreciate that. And again, we have lots of other tips and resources on the ABC website to help address this question. I'm just checking. Again, thank you so much to everyone who has been participating. I think with this, unfortunately, we are going to have to wrap up, though. And so I want to make sure that all of our speakers get the opportunity to answer our final question. We'll go in order of the speakers, and that is, what is one thing that you hope people take away from this webinar and share with a friend? And there's no need to rush. But John, if you wanna kick things off.
Yeah, I'm going to cheat a little bit and say two. The first one I'll say is hope. you know, I woke up on January 1st and I thought there was no chance I was going to find a Dusky's truck. I thought I would probably never see that bird in my life and that it could well be extinct. And we found it, and we found it multiple times, and we're supporting work on it. So I think there's a lot of really hopeful stories that we heard today, and you know, I think just a feeling of hope that people can take away from it. And then the second one is, I mentioned it briefly, it's just, you know, but in the theme of this webinar, programmatic support, and all of you for supporting ABC. Thank you so much for that. You know, I mentioned this with the Santa Marta Sabre Wing and how we were able to act really quickly. The only reason we were able to do that was because of supporters like you who had given us the funding in advance. So we had that funding in hand and we were able to really quickly do conservation action. So second thing I would say there is thanks to all of you for supporting this, and please continue to do so, because there's, I think, a lot of great things that we can accomplish next year.
Thanks, John. And Adam.
Yeah, I'd echo what John said, in that we're just extremely you know, happy and thankful for all the support we receive at ABC, particularly, you know, here in Hawaii. Doing the work that I do is challenging, complex, and expensive, and you know, the development and the methodology and how we've sort of progressed very quickly over the last few years. It's in no small part due to all the supporters here. So really appreciate it, and we're just looking forward to pushing farther and into 2024 and beyond.
Wonderful. And Juan.
Yeah, I would say that, you know, conservation in the traditional way, just with focusing on protected areas, is critical. We know that's very important. We definitely do a lot of that work in ABC, but also remembering that, you know, to protect that in working landscapes can be an important tool. And one way to achieve that is supporting ABC. So like John, I also sneaked 2 in 1 there.
That totally works. Thank you. And Kaitlyn.
All right, I'm going to take a little bit of a different twist on this. One of the reasons I love working on collisions is because it's a problem where we have all the tools we need to fix it. We've just got to get those tools out there. So if you, and I bet ABC supporters already have windows that are fixed, but if you don't fix one window, or go to a friend of yours and explain the issue to them and have them fix one window, because it can be so heartening to directly reduce one of the biggest direct causes of bird mortality in North America. And it feels really good to take direct action. And so I hope everyone does that.
That's wonderful too, Kaitlyn. I have to say, Emily Dickinson said that hope is the thing with feathers, but I think that you all have been so incredible and give me hope for the new year with birds and birds conservation, that I'm honestly really upset that we have to end the webinar now. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you so much to my colleagues here for your expertise and time to share all of these incredible things. Thank you to our registrants and our ABC members and supporters for joining us. All of the work that you've heard about today is made possible thanks to you, to our ABC supporters, and I hope you can feel the genuine gratitude that I and all of my colleagues have for you. We just cannot thank you enough. I genuinely witness the impact of your support in my work every single day, and it's so clear that you are making a difference for wild birds and their habitats, whether you acknowledge it or not. You really are. And if you would like to support more critical bird conservation like what you've learned about today, please do consider making a gift right now to support ABC's Habitat is Home 1-to-1 match campaign. A group of generous ABC supporters have already committed $500,000, and ABC is working to match that so that together we can do even more for bird conservation in the year ahead. Please visit abcbirds.org/helphabitat or scan the QR code you see here on your phone. And again, just so much gratitude and thanks for caring about birds and sharing ABC's mission to conserve them. I'm so excited for what we'll be able to accomplish together in 2024 and beyond. And I just really hope that you know you are part of the ABC flock doing incredible work. Happy holidays, everyone, and Happy New Year to 2024 and the birds.